I know that, number one is not much of a question, and number two is the Jets, so there's always going to be a question until we actually hear it, and then when we hear it, we'll wonder if that was the right move. And then what the Niners did at 3, I'm very excited about this draft, Peter. What do you think?
Well, I think one of the reasons you should be excited is that, I think there's 3 storylines right at the top. I had a coach tell me last week, he said, I've never seen quarterbacks get pushed up the board as aggressively as they're getting pushed up the board this year, where there's a real legitimate chance that the top 4 picks are quarterbacks. And as another GM told me, that other than Trevor Lawrence, at least on their board, after Trevor Lawrence, there are 6 players before any other quarterback comes into play, and yet it could well be that the top 4 picks could be quarterbacks this year. That means, like, if you're the New York Giants, you might get potentially a great tackle just drop into your lap at number 11. Or if you're the Dallas Cowboys, who really need to start rebuilding that offensive line. I mean, they have a lot of needs, but there are just so many interesting possibilities based on the quality and the caliber of players that are going to drop. And then I think the last thing is, what's the team right now? Is it Carolina at 8? Is it New England at 15? Or is it somebody else that I'm not even thinking of, maybe Chicago at 20? What team is going to perhaps irrationally move up to try to get, say, the 5th quarterback? Or, if they're in love with the 4th quarterback, whoever it is, move up and maybe pay too much. I mean, Rich, the question is, and you're Mr. Jet, what happens if, and look, we've all said, it looks like Kyle Wilson's going number 2. And I do believe that is by far, it has the best chance of happening. So what happens if they keep Sam Darnold and they trade and get Carolina's 1 they trade down to 8 and they get Carolina's 1 in 22 and 1 in 23. And they have Sam Darnold for 1 more year, and they then put off their quarterback choice until next year or the year after. I think hey, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but the Jets really intrigue me in this draft.
Well, the whole reason why I would think that the Jets wouldn't trade down, if this is true, is that the 49ers either A, offered the same thing to the Jets and they turned it down, or remarkably did not even knock on the Jets' door, potentially because... Rich,
I think they did knock on the Jets' door, and I think Joe Douglas, as I wrote a couple of weeks ago, said that we're not trading the pick. And so if that is true, if that's true, then the Jets are going to sit there and they're going to pick somebody. I doubt they're going to sit at 2 and take Kyle Pitts. Even though if Sam Darnold stayed, I bet he'd be pretty happy to have Kyle Pitts on his team.
Well, if Sam Darnold stayed, they wouldn't be choosing 2nd overall either, right? Because it would have been much better worked out.
Unless,
right,
Rich, what happens if they trade down and somehow, some way? Because look, I'm not saying it's probable or anything, but if you trade to 8, one of those receivers or Kyle Pitts is going to be sitting there, and maybe 2. So you never know what might happen.
Yeah, I don't know, Peter. It's just, again, when you see the wide receivers in this league who have been so successful, from DK Metcalf to Justin Jefferson to Tyreek Hill, and how they're none of them are top 15, like to actually sit here and stick with the quarterback that could be very talented, still in Sam Darnold, because he's been unfairly evaluated. There's no 2 ways about that. But to bring in a new regime and tell them you need to evaluate this kid too, after that would make a 3rd different regime evaluating Sam Darnold, as opposed to just starting the clock fresh, which we all know contractually what that means in terms of salary cap, And then you
Look,
I don't see sticking with Sam Darnold being a viable option for a team that just doesn't want to keep choosing, top 3, top 4, or hope that the first rounders that they get are at the top of the draft. It's time to actually start hitting the win it now button, don't you think?
Yeah,
Peter?
I agree, but Rich, if you trade Sam Darnold and you pick Zach Wilson, you're not winning big this year. You're still building. And so, you made a great point about receivers. Does anybody remember that just 4 years ago, the 5th, 7th, and 9th picks in the draft were Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and John Ross?
There you go.
John Ross is already a washout. Mike Williams is good. He's not a big star. Corey Davis
is on the Jets.
Is pretty good, and now he's a Jet. So, I could not agree with you more, because last year I thought, when I look back on the draft last year, the best pick in the draft was Justin Jefferson being picked number 22. And, so to me, I think the wide receiver classes now are so good, so deep, that if you can get Chase Claypool at, I think he was 49, if you can get, Tyler Johnson, I think, is going to be a really good player for the Bucs. He's a 5th-round pick. And it isn't just last year. It's obviously the year before. After pick number 50, A.J. Brown, D.K. Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. I look at wide receivers today like I look at running backs. You can get one down the line.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.